Welcome to Advocacy and Politics Unplugged, the show that will dissect critical policy issues, explore the art of advocacy and politics, and share insights on how to make your voice heard in today's ever-changing political landscape. Sponsored by Con Edison and Verizon, I'm John Ravitz, the Executive Vice President and Chief Operating Officer for the Business Council of Westchester. Our guest this afternoon is David Lombardo, who is the host of WNYC's The Capitol Pressroom, a daily public radio show covering state government. He also hosts Dispatches from Planet Albany, a bi-weekly podcast diving into the power and politics at the Capitol. In his free time, he cooks, battles nagging leg injuries, and watches a lot of movies and TV. We could have a separate show just on the movies and TV and what's in your rotation these days. David, thank you for coming in. We appreciate it. And welcome to the Business Council of Westchester's podcast studio.
Well, thanks for having me, John. And I'm always excited to see when people actually read off the bio that I submit, because I take a lot of time and energy to try to tailor that. So thank you, John. Well, I feel seen.
It was a fun bio to read. You know, one of the things, as many people know, is the largest business membership organization in Westchester County that focuses on economic development and advocacy. So many of the issues that we deal with on a daily basis, begin and end in Albany. So having you here to talk about what's happening in Albany, what some of the things we need to look at for 2026 will be important. You know, the legislature ended their session in June. We had a late budget this year, but the biggest concern that I think many rank and file legislators had was, would they have to come back for a special election after the big beautiful bill was passed in Washington, and New York could study the impact of what some of those cuts would be. They didn't come back for a special session. They aren't going to come back until January, to the start of the 2026 session. What are you hearing? What are you thinking are going to be some of the key issues that the governor and the legislature are going to have to face?
Well, I think you just laid it out there with regards to the so-called big, beautiful bill passed in Washington, D.C. So much of the response to that is going to have to be on the fiscal side of things, meaning we're going to see the response in the budget, right? And so we'll get to have an inkling of what's going to happen in December as the governor begins to link out some of her state of the state and budget proposals. But really, there's going to be this calculation, right, of, are we going to have to cut? Are we going to have to raise taxes? Which of those advocacy groups is going to dominate Albany? So it's really the fiscal battles that I'm most interested in terms of the rubber meeting the road in Albany. But then there are obviously going to be so many moving parts that are going to shape what we see in 2026 that is outside of Albany. So we have the New York City mayoral election that's going on. We're going to have the midterms going on, which includes a GOP challenger to the governor, a Democratic primary challenger to the governor. So all of these moving parts are going to influence and create a lot of variables.
Well, and that's why our show, Advocacy and Politics Unplugged, it was titled, because yes, they're the advocacy, they're the issues that we all have to deal with to help the business community in Westchester County, but politics does play a part in this. You can't get around it. Let's talk a little bit about the upcoming election in 2025, specifically in New York City, because it is getting national attention. Mm-hmm. It is going to have a huge impact on the tone of how the legislative session in Albany will start. Assemblyman Mondami, if you had said a year ago, would be the Democratic nominee, I don't think anyone would have believed it. He is the Democratic nominee. We're 6 weeks away from the general election.
Wow.
What do you think, not to predict about the election, but let's just presume, because of the party enrollment in New York City, the Democratic nominee is going to be the next mayor of the city of New York. What does his election do to politics in New York State?
Well, I think it all depends on the tone that he wants to set as mayor. Is he going to be reminiscent of a Bill de Blasio policy agenda, which is someone who he's talked a lot about in terms of the way he'd actually implement his administration? Or is he going to go to the left of that? Is he really going to take a big home run swing on every issue and gear up to potentially lose some fights? Or is he going to be more pragmatic? I've known Assemblymember Mamdani for more than 4 years now. I remember interviewing him shortly after his primary victory against Arabella Simotas. She was an incumbent assembly member, and I've always found him to be unbelievably pragmatic. In addition to being a great speaker, he is first and foremost pragmatic, and we see that this summer as he tailors his election message for a general election audience. And I think that same pragmatism is going to, if elected mayor, steer his administration. And so I think while there are some platforms that he's going to push, things that he's not going to move away from, like trying to get some free buses, like trying to realize universal childcare. I think he's going to see the constraints around him, whether it's the city council or whether it's what the politicians at Albany are going to want to go for, and he's going to push up against them. But it's hard to imagine him being ineffective or taking on fights that he knows he's going to lose unless there's a reason why, okay, I lose this fight now, but we gain momentum. And I find him to be a very smart, pragmatic guy.
Well, what's interesting is that if he puts together his agenda and his ask, because many of the big ticket items that he has talked about in his campaign, he is going to have to get approval from Albany. Which
is my favorite part of this conversation, because there's so many people who are just getting engaged in politics for the first time and like, Zoran's going to deliver X, Y, Z. And it's like, yeah, sure, if Speaker Hasty, Senate Majority Leader Stuart Cousins, and Governor Hochul are on board too.
And the process with the budget is that once the governor introduces his budget, then the Senate and the Assembly hold joint budget hearings on different areas. And you'll have to tell me what the phrase was, when the mayors of the big cities come to
Tin Cup Day,
which each mayor comes up with their ask. He's going to sit in front of former colleagues in the Assembly, certainly, and as well as colleagues he worked with in the state Senate.
And just to interject for a second, do you, as someone who's been in this space for a long time, have any regret that we may not get Andrew Cuomo as mayor of New York City, having to come before these people who hate his guts and begging for money? I as a reporter, am a little sad that I'm not going to, likely not going to see that.
I feel sorry for you that you're going to miss that opportunity because you probably could have, they probably could have sold tickets for that little hearing room in the first floor of the Legislative
hearing
Office
room
building where they hold that.
We're going to need a bigger boat.
Yeah, much bigger boat if that were to occur. But again, there's going to be a lot of attention when possibly the next mayor, Mamdani, comes to Albany for that first ask.
Oh, yeah.
And again, as you mentioned, there's going to be an interesting dynamic between the majority leader of the state Senate, the Speaker of the Assembly, and the governor. And that as of today's taping of this show, none of them have endorsed Mamdani yet, which I also think is interesting, that you have the leaders of, and it's not just those three, it's also Senator Schumer, Senator Gillibrand. The leadership of the Democratic Party in New York State has not rallied around the winner of the Democratic primary.
Yeah, and I would hasten to tell these elected officials how to do their job, but it seems like they're more afraid of their shadow than they should be. This idea that, if we lean into Assemblymember Zoran Mamdani, this person who has generated more interest in the Democratic Party than all of these other establishment figures probably combined, and we try to lean into him, we're going to somehow pay a penalty, as if Republicans are not already going to tailor their message around the fringe candidates of the Democrats. They're going to find plenty of people to hit them about. Elizabeth Warren's not going anywhere. Bernie Sanders isn't going anywhere. The rest of the squad, AOC, they're not going anywhere. So this idea that, as long as we don't back Zoran Mamdani, we're going to be immune from any political attacks is stupid to me. And if I'm Governor Kathy Hochul, my messaging around Zoran Mamdani is, of course I endorse him. I'm a fellow Democrat, and I want a Democrat to win, not Andrew Cuomo, not Curtis Sliwa, not Eric Adams, who's running as an independent. And yes, there are things I disagree with him about, but his message is affordability, and where we can make that work, I'm going to make that work, and where we can't, I'm going to be an important block on him in Albany. Like, the idea that this needs to be four-dimensional chess is stupid to me and indicative of Democrats who can't get out of their way most of the time.
Our guest this afternoon on Advocacy and Politics Unplugged, sponsored by Con Edison and Verizon, is David Lombardo, who's the host of WNYC's The Capitol Pressroom, which is a daily public radio show which covers everything that goes on in the state capitol in Albany, New York. It's interesting when you think about what rank and file legislators think about now, and this is strictly politics, but it's the reality. For me, I always had to be concerned about a general election because I knew I was going to be targeted as the only Republican representing in Manhattan.
The last,
yeah, I'm a Trivial Pursuit question now, which is sad. Now, in 2025, the biggest fear for a Democratic majority member in the state assembly or the state senate is to be primaried. by someone.
Yeah, depending on where you live. I mean, if you're on Long Island or outside of the city.
How have you seen that affect the daily operations in Albany now?
I think we saw the biggest backlash from that in the wake of the 2018 and 2020 elections. I think that was the first time it really dawned on people, oh shit, I need to actually be concerned about this rabble-rousing crew that wants my seat, because they can actually, through social media and this general excitement on certain issues, give me a hard time. And I think in light of that, the incumbents, have taken steps to try to prevent that, attack from the left, and also just make themselves more ready for a primary campaign. So I think of somebody like in the Bronx, the Assembly Education Chair, Michael Benedetto. He hasn't changed his politics despite multiple efforts to take him out on his left flank, but he's ready for a primary campaign. Whereas you see some other people who maybe do tailor their politics a little bit. So I think people respond to a certain degree like that, but then you also have leadership that is still a check on what they're going to do. So you might have members of the assembly who now are more conscious of their left and are going to try to push certain issues, but I think part of that is with the understanding that, okay, Assembly Speaker Carl Heastie's going to keep the door shut and not actually allow this to move forward, not like that fun house in the Senate where you can pretty much move any bill to the floor now. So I think that's kind of the different moving parts there.
The dynamics have shifted. They really have, because for us as a business organization, there's so many issues that we see legislation that is passed, and then the work really begins to try to either urge the governor to veto the bills that really are going to have a negative impact on business as well.
It's got to be a completely different dynamic for you circa 2019, when you could count on the Senate to be the saucer that chilled all the enthusiasm from the Assembly, whereas the Assembly, what do you want to pass? Health Act? Sure.
Well, one of our biggest battles has been prevailing wage. We want to continue to see the cranes in the air and the shovels in the ground. They create jobs. They bring in revenue. They improve the quality of life for those communities. And prevailing wage used to always pass the Assembly, but never get passed in the Senate. When the Democratic majority took over the Senate, we knew that these were going to be two House bills that were going to eventually get to the governor's desk. And so it's been the Assembly that really has slowed down that process, which 25 years ago, when I was in that chamber, I would never believe that would happen. So the dynamics have changed. Our guest this afternoon is David Lombardo, who's the host of WCNY's The Capitol Pressroom, a daily public radio show covering state government in Albany. We're going to come back with David in a moment after we hear a brief moment from our sponsors. Con Edison customers, are you looking for an efficient way to heat and cool your home? Consider geothermal heat pumps. These innovative systems turn energy from the ground around your home into cooled or heated air for climate control, providing you significant energy savings and year-round comfort. Con Edison is dedicated to sustainability and helping customers save. That's why they offer incentives for installing geothermal heat pumps. Eligible homeowners could receive rebates that significantly lower their upfront cost. By choosing geothermal, homeowners won't just save money, they'll also reduce their carbon footprint and contribute to a cleaner environment. To learn more about geothermal heat pumps and available incentives, visit coned.com/geothermal. It's a smart choice for both homes and the planet. Don't just connect your business, make it even smarter. Partner with Verizon to gain the control, security, and speed to overcome challenges and adapt in real time. Verizon's cutting-edge networking technologies can help you build a strong, agile foundation for your organization. They help schools and small businesses access the essential technology they need to compete in today's digital world, and are on a mission to help solve some of the biggest challenges the world faces today by leveraging their technology, innovation, and people. Verizon is working to open doors for many communities through digital skills training, grant opportunities, and more. To protect the planet for future generations, they're investing in renewable energy and improving the efficiency of their networks through the power of technology and shared knowledge. Verizon is helping people build the confidence to change lives for the better. This is Advocacy and Politics Unplugged, part of the BCW podcast network. We're sponsored by Con Edison and Verizon. Our guest today is David Lombardo, who's the host of WCNY's The Capitol Pressroom, a daily public radio show covering state government. David, I wanted to just go back to one last piece about the Madami effect, if that's what we actually see happen in November. I've always felt that right now, because of the way things are structured, probably the toughest jobs in Albany right now are Majority Leader Stuart Cousins from Westchester County and Speaker Hasty from the Bronx, because they now have to oversee conferences that are across the board in terms of political spectrums. You have the socialist, very progressive members, to the moderates, to some of the conservatives from the upstate areas. If Mondami wins, does this give those progressive members in both majority conferences a little more oomph when they go into members-only conference and say, hey, I want this bill passed?
Oh, sure. And again, not to speak ill of the Democratic Socialists, but there are a range of Democratic Socialists in Albany. There are some who seem kind of detached from reality in terms of what can get through Albany. And then there are others who are, again, I'll use that P word, pragmatic. So I think of someone like State Senator Julia Salazar. She was the first socialist to get elected to Albany. Moderate Democrats in Albany love her. I remember talking to Chantel Smith, the former counsel for the Democratic Senate and now with Tusk Strategies. Julia Salazar is her favorite senator. And so someone like Julia Salazar has always sort of played this long game and has always been cognizant of what can get done and where you can push. And then there are other members who, can't, go outside and tell you it's raining if it's raining. They just think it's, the sky's always blue and great. And I think they are going to be like, yeah, we've got this mandate, we can do all this. And I don't necessarily think they're going to be that effective in terms of moving things. I think Zohran Mamdani, as a great talker and a great communicator, was never a great effective legislator in Albany. So I still see their power as being pretty muted, especially because their conference, which is really how you make a difference, is not any larger within the Democratic conference. Their caucus is still a fraction of power. If maybe there's a movement that takes shape in the wake of the election, where now these people are even more afraid of primaries in 2026, but I'm skeptical. I think we've kind of seen the map and how it shakes out.
One of the things, and again, this is where the disconnect, once you leave the bubble of Albany, which I did after leaving the legislature.
You got out. You're safe.
I got out. I still have my some of my wits with me. When we see legislators pass bills that have a direct negative impact on businesses, especially small businesses. Now, somebody could write a piece of legislation and have all the best intentions in the world and not understand what some of the unintended consequences are. But when we see legislators consistently put bills in for worker comp, put bills in that's going to cause more mandates and regulations for small businesses, I don't think they put that in their newsletter. I don't think they say, we're a sponsor of a bill that's going to now cost you more money.
Well, they're not going to frame it that way, John. They're going to say, I'm working for the people, and I'm trying to stop those big businesses from denying you workers' compensation or something like that.
Right. But what they're not saying is that same legislation isn't just for the big guys. It's also affecting small businesses and even non-for-profits.
Oh, sure.
So, that's one of the challenges that we face as a business membership organization, that we need legislators to understand that, again, the impact and the unintended consequences are not going to go away. And it is sending a message to the business community that New York is not the easiest place to be.
Oh, sure. But as someone who primarily hears these conversations from a media perspective, I'm not in these rooms. I don't know what the lobbying effort is like. It's one thing if you have an organic mom and pop grassroots led effort to say, try to deal with minimum wage or unemployment insurance costs. It's another thing if you have what listeners might know of as an astroturfing effort, where it's like Enron and Halliburton are secretly funding this effort and making it sound like they're mom and pop businesses. And I think part of that means that you need to have that more genuine push and conversation in Albany. And I think there are so many members still who are kind of scarred by the way that this conversation has been so pro-business in the past, that there is a reflex amongst Democrats to say, okay, well, it's been like this for so long, we can swing the pendulum back. And I think we saw that with criminal justice, for example. So pre-2019, everything was more law and order focused. Post-2019, it was like, okay, well, they've had their time in the sun. Now we're going to, listen to the criminal justice advocates. And you see that pendulum kind of swing back now. And I have to imagine the same sort of things happening on the business side.
Well, and we've also, and I think what makes, hopefully the business community more effective in Albany is that we've joined as coalitions. So it's not just hearing from one region in the state when it comes to some of those issues. It's hearing from businesses, organizations who represent small businesses from all over the state, from Brooklyn to Buffalo.
Sure.
And I think that's very effective as well.
But I think it helps if you have the labor buy-in too, because something like unemployment insurance, while that was something that, like, say, business groups were pushing for years and years and years, it didn't move until AFL-CIO was like, oh shit, if we pay this off, we can actually increase the unemployment benefit, and that actually helps our workforce. And I think that was why we then saw the speakers make this a big priority. So it's finding those partnerships is probably really important.
And just on the ground level, we brought small businesses in to meet with our Westchester delegation members so they could understand what impact of the UI was having on a monthly basis, what they were getting dinged in. Our guest this afternoon is David Lombardo, who's the host of WCNY's The Capitol Pressroom. We've talked about the 2025 election. Let's skip now to the 2026 election. Obviously, the governor is going to be up for re-election as well as...
What?
Sorry
Do
to break
people
that
know
to you.
this?
Sorry to break it to you. Breaking news.
Jesus, this looks like a busy year next year now.
So you have the governor, you have the state legislature, you have the congressional delegation all up. The governor is, as of now, going to face a primary from her lieutenant governor, if not, and I think that's the only one that is in the race right now. How does the primary, is it even a real primary? And then obviously the general election we don't know who the Republican candidate's going to be. Is it going to be Congresswoman Stefanik? Is it going to be Nassau County Executive Bruce Blakeman? But what does she need to do during these first quarter of 2026 to prepare for a primary and then obviously a bigger general election than she probably would want to have?
Well, I think we're seeing what she's doing on the primary side of things, which is basically getting all of her ducks in a row. We recently saw Congressman Richie Torres, who for the last year was the biggest critic of Governor Kathy Hochul, maybe in either party, and he's now supporting her. And I think she's lining up all of her support so that she's in a position, at least with regards to the establishment, to hold off Antonio Delgado, who, to my mind, is not a serious threat. He's trying to go in the same sort of lane that Zoran Mamdani had, but he's not as good of a communicator, and I don't think there is the statewide issues that can motivate people the same way talking about New York City specific issues, whether it's public transportation or rent, can resonate with that audience. The general is where I get more excited, and I think you really need to spend more time. And this is my own prediction that I have just looking at this landscape, and I'd be curious to know what you think. Elise Stefanik, she says she's not going to announce until after the election in 2025. When Lee Zeldin ran, he had declared 18 months prior to the election he was going to run against Andrew Cuomo. He had declared so early. And this idea that Elise Stefanik isn't going to actually formally have a campaign until less than a year before an election makes me think that everything we're seeing is, one, about getting press for Elise Stefanik, but two, to clear the field for Bruce Blakeman in Nassau County, who really can't announce he's going to run until after he gets reelected. And you're closer to Republican politics than me. I'm going to swing things around. What do you think about that hypothesis?
Well, again, and Bruce Blakeman, for our listeners, he's the county executive for Nassau County. He's up for re-election in November of 2025.
He's going to beat some Democratic stooge in Nassau County.
I have no clue who even knew the candidates are.
It doesn't matter.
Look, in 1994, George Pataki beat Mario Cuomo, and the formula that he used was to have to double and sometimes triple the numbers that previous Republican candidates had won upstate and in the suburbs, which hopefully then would suppress the New York City vote. What we saw in 94 was that suppression did work, but there was also, I think, a little negative weariness of Mario Cuomo at that point.
Running for a fourth term,
right. And
wave year for Republicans.
And then on the upstate counties and in the suburbs, Pataki did the numbers that he needed to get. For a Republican to win in 2026, that formula still is in place, but the party enrollment numbers have continued to grow in the Democratic favor.
But I see you dodged my question, John, which was, do you think Elise Stefanik is serious?
I think that she obviously has to make a decision whether she's going to take a risk and give up her seat.
Which I think she's fine with.
And then take the plunge.
I don't think she's interested in this version of Congress anymore.
Well, she obviously thought she wasn't going to be there with the appointment that President Trump had offered her for the UN position. But look, whether she decides to run, again, the issues that she's going to run on are going to be fascinating to see how she plays downstate.
Oh yeah, terribly. Terrible. She is the worst candidate that Republicans could bring out because of what you just said. She is red meat to the base, and she is not appealing to moderate and liberal voters. And someone like Mike Lawler, whether he is a moderate, whether he's not a moderate, at least appears moderate, and would have had a much better starting point for this conversation about a Republican upset than Elise Stefanik or Bruce Blakeman, who's got great politician hair, but is also kind of aligned with Donald Trump, which is not necessarily the greatest thing to do in New York State, despite his strong showing for a Republican in the 2024 presidential election.
Right. Well, I think the Trump impact and will have a major role to play in the 2026 elections because, again, every day is different in Washington.
Yeah, and I mean, this could be a swing year again, right, because this is going to be a midterm during a Republican administration, kind of like what we saw in 2018 when Andrew Cuomo basically ran against Donald Trump Jr., as he described Mark Molinaro, who was anything but, a Donald Trump acolyte.
We've spent a lot of time talking politics. I want to talk about one issue that the Business Council of Westchester has been very engaged in, and that's the changing energy landscape. We were at the epicenter of when Indian Point closed. We certainly fought against Indian Point closing because we thought knew there would be a reliability issue. There would be an increase in cost as well as carbon emissions. That happened. So now we supported the premise of the CLCPA. Who doesn't want to have a carbon-free emission world? But we said the dates totally were out of whack. And it was a pretty lonely journey to be able to, stand there and say, we're not going to get to where you want to get in 2030 and certainly not in 2040. What are we going to do? What are our transitions? The legislature is going to have to address this. What are you hearing about,
Do you think they're going to have to? I think we just continue to have goals and statute and we just ignore them.
And just not be in compliance.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, the other challenge that we have to face, though, is what's Plan B? Because right now in Westchester County, tonight, when we tape this, we're taping this in early September, I'm going to one of our local municipalities who are putting a moratorium on battery storage. And we have other municipalities that are putting moratoriums on solar. So the question then is, what's your Plan B? Because we can't go back. We need to move forward on building this renewable infrastructure with transitions, continue to use pipelines, continue to use gas. I don't hear that conversation happening in the legislature.
Well, it's definitely not happening in the legislature. The legislature is still, for the most part, operating under the same sort of 2019 perspective that led to the Climate Leadership and Community Protection Act. Where you see the difference is from the Hochul administration, which is night and day different from when Governor Hochul took office in 2021, 2022. I mean, this is Mr. Hyde, Dr. Jekyll. It's so different. And when you talk about what does the future look like, I mean, plans A, B, C, D through Z for this governor appears to be nuclear. And, you want to stick it to Westchester. I think the plan is that nuclear gets tied into a future casino site. And that really helps, bringing it back to Yonkers if you want. But I think everything we're going to see is out of the administration. It's all going to be regulatory. It's all going to be now with review of pipeline proposals that are exactly the same as what was rejected. The only thing different is we've got a different administration in White House and we've got a different administration in the Albany executive mansion. So they're going to view things a little differently. But yeah, I don't think offshore wind is moving in the future. I don't think we're going to see any big investments in solar here in New York, especially as federal dollars for green energy basically dries up because a lot of the state programs were federal money.
Yep, so tax credits that were not put in the big, beautiful bill. So.
Exactly. So I think anything we're going to see on the energy side is probably going to come from the administration and whatever they can do regulatorily.
Well, we're going to stay on top of it because, the fact is if we're going to recruit and retain businesses to Westchester and the region in New York State, we got to be able to demonstrate that we have a reliable and an affordable grid.
And you guys aren't getting a casino, right? You're not upstate here in Westchester.
We're going to get a casino.
You're not going to get nuclear plants.
No, we're not. No, I don't think that ship has sailed. Yeah. But look, there are so many issues that I'd love to spend 2 more hours talking to you about, but we're going to let you go. But
I can clear my schedule, John.
Oh, I appreciate that. I know you're going to have a busy 2026. We're going to...
Well, there's these elections you've been telling me about now. Yeah, I was not prepared for this.
I'm sorry, I burst your bubble. We're going to tune in every day to the Capitol Pressroom on WCNY, and we're also going to listen to Dispatches from Planet Albany, which is your bi-weekly podcast.
We got to get you on that, too. We're going to get you on Dispatches and have you say things that you ultimately regret, but listeners really enjoy.
Well, I challenge you to do that.
Okay.
And I'm going to be up in Albany a lot, so we'll make that happen. But again, our guest today has been David Lombardo, who is the host of WCNY's The Capitol Pressroom. David, thank you for being here. We want to thank our sponsors again, Con Edison and Verizon. This is John Ravitz, the Executive Vice President and COO of the Business Council of Westchester. You've been listening to Advocacy and Politics Unplugged, part of the BCW Podcast Network.
Be sure to check out the BCW Podcast Network's expansive lineup of shows: Leadership Unleashed, What's Trending, Advocacy and Politics Unplugged, the Member Spotlight, and Nonprofit Voices of Impact. The Business Council of Westchester is the county's largest business membership organization focusing on economic development and advocacy. With over 1,100 members, it is our mission to work for the profitability of our members and the prosperity of the Westchester community. To learn more, go to thebcw.org.
The BCW Podcast Network. Build, connect with